We're in the Gospel of Mark. We started going to the Gospel of Mark last week, and we got through the first 20 verses of Mark chapter 1, and introduced this book, and kind of gave an idea of when this was written, who wrote it, and then dove into these verses. And today we're going to do the second half of chapter 1, verses 21 through 45. And so just a couple of introductory statements that we're going to make just so we have context in the story going forward. What we really see in like the first part of these verses we're going to look at, we're actually going to see what seems to be like a 24-hour day for Jesus. It's like, what does Sabbath day look like for Jesus? What happened in this 24-hour period? And on a Jewish day would be considered from sunset to sunset, right? And as you know, the sunset doesn't always set at the exact same time every day. But if you wanted to try to think of it really technically, you could be like, so think like 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. You know, we look at time from like midnight to midnight as a day, but that's not how they did it. It's like the sun went down, okay, now this day has started, sunset, that one ended, now it started the next one. So sunset to sunset was kind of how that looked like for a Jewish day. The Sabbath day is a Saturday, and that's what we're going to be looking at the context. The Sabbath day is a Saturday, and the Sabbath is a Jewish day of rest and worship given to them by God, given to Israel by God to observe. Now something else, he's going to go into a place called a synagogue. Okay, it's a little bit different than what you'd think of for a Sunday morning gathering for church, but they would go to a synagogue, and that is a Greek word that means a gathering of people. But eventually it came to be known as a place for people to gather, and the synagogue was a place where the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the law, the Torah would be read, and rabbis would teach. Now, Jesus teaching at a synagogue would not be weird or unusual. It's like, why would you let this guy come in and teach? Well, that's because he was a rabbi, which means he was an educated and acknowledged Jewish teacher, and the local synagogue would have been more than happy to have a traveling rabbi teach. That would have been normal. That would have been a normal thing to do. Oh, cool, we got a guest speaker. Let him up here. Let him talk. Like that would have been a normal thing in the synagogue with traveling rabbis. So that's the context diving into this next portion of Scripture. A day is from sunset to sunset. They're going to go to a synagogue, which is a place of worship, and that's a Saturday. And Jesus is going to teach there at the synagogue, and that's not out of place or unusual. Verse 21. And they went into Capernaum, and straightway on the Sabbath day he entered into the synagogue and taught. And they were astonished at his doctrine, for he taught them as one that had authority and not as the scribes. So he talks about how he teaches with authority. He's not teaching like the other people would teach. Because normally in the synagogue, teaching would be like, and Rabbi so-and-so says this, and Rabbi so-and-so says this, and Rabbi so-and-so says this, and someone asks a question, well, what about this? Well, Rabbi so-and-so said this about that. It would always be referencing what someone else had to say about that topic, generally. It wasn't like, here's my opinion. It would be, well, in these writings we have this, and in these writings we have that. The closest equivalent we have to that would be if sometimes we quote a pastor or we quote a commentary note on something that we're studying together. But Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus, when he teaches, doesn't go, Rabbi so-and-so says this, and so-and-so taught this on this. He goes in there and just teaches it from himself. He doesn't come in there and make a reference point to anybody. He just reads the Torah and teaches with authority. They had never seen anyone do that. And it was good. It wasn't like, oh man, this guy is kind of like shotgunning it and this doesn't sound so good. No, like he's a really gifted teacher, and he's doing it without referencing anybody. And so Jesus teaches with this authority from himself. So Jesus teaches with authority in the synagogue. He does not teach from authority of the teachings of other rabbis, but teaches solely as an authority himself. Verse 23. And there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. And he cried out, saying, Let us alone. What have we to do with thee, thou Jesus of Nazareth? Art thou come to destroy us? I know thee who thou art, the Holy One of God. And Jesus rebuked him, saying, Hold thy peace, and come out of him. And when the unclean spirit had torn him and cried with a loud voice, he came out of him. And they were amazed, insomuch that they questioned among themselves, saying, What thing is this? What new doctrine is this? For with authority commandeth he even the unclean spirits, and they do obey him. And immediately his fame spread abroad throughout all the region round about Galilee. What he does at the synagogue by casting this demon out of someone, this spreads very quickly. But what's most interesting about this part of the story in Mark chapter 1 is that understand if anybody else was going to try and cast a demon out of someone at that point in Jewish culture, they would have had like these rituals to do. They'd be like, okay, we're going to burn incense, and we're going to say by the name of so-and-so, and by the name of so-and-so, we adjure this demon to come out of you, right? Like, they do all these ritual, like exorcist type things to try and cast a demon out, and usually with no luck in regards to that. But Jesus doesn't say, in the power of the name of so-and-so. He doesn't burn any incense. He doesn't lay hands and pray. The demon starts talking to him through this man, and he goes, shut up, get out of here. Like that's it. And the demon stops talking. Like it's just, what, wait, you can do that? You can just like tell an evil spirit to stop talking and it's not, yeah, Jesus just does that. And so he does it with authority. So he's in the synagogue teaching with authority. They're already amazed at that. Like he doesn't need any reference notes. Like he doesn't need to like reference anybody. Like he just knows this stuff. And this is like, I've never heard teaching like this before. And then this evil spirit starts, oh, you're the Holy One. What's amazing is that this evil spirit, this demon, if you will, knows who he is. He goes, you're the Holy One. Talking about the prophecy of the Messiah that would come. And he's like, you're not here to destroy us already, are you? Like he's kind of worried that their time is coming to an end on earth. And they're like, wait, you're kind of early, aren't you? I thought we had more time yet. Like, tell me you're kind of early. And he's like, just shut up. And he frees the man of the demon. So with this authority he teaches, with this authority he casts out demons. This is just, everybody's just like shocked by this. Because he's just doing things. He does not call upon an authority to do it. He's not doing the rituals that anyone told him. He just does it with authority. And so this is significantly amazing what he's doing. He doesn't go through a bunch of exorcism rituals, but casts the demon out by his own authority. So both those things happen in the synagogue. He teaches with authority. He casts out a demon with authority in the synagogue. Verse 29, and forthwith when they were come out of the synagogue, they entered into the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. But Simon's wife's mother, his mother-in-law, lay sick of a fever, and anon they tell him of her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and immediately the fever left her, and she ministered unto them. So there's a couple of crazy things about this, right? So it's Sabbath. And so they're observing the Sabbath like good Jewish people would. And they go and worship at the synagogue together. And then they go to Simon's house. And his mother-in-law is there, and she's sick. And like, oh, yeah, sorry, my mother-in-law's just not doing well. She's kind of sick. Jesus doesn't pray over her. He doesn't say, oh, that's too bad. Hope she gets well soon. He literally, what's the text say? He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. He acted like she was just all cool the whole time. Oh, here, let me help you get up. Helps her up, and the fever's gone. But the most interesting thing is that immediately she starts serving. What she would have done on the Sabbath day is they're all gathering together at the house together. Immediately she's ministering to people, serving people. And so the point about that is she didn't just kind of get better. It's not like, oh, my fever's starting to leave. Or like, oh man, I feel a little better than I did a minute ago. No, like she's completely healed to the point where she can like serve other people. She couldn't do anything a moment ago, but now suddenly she can serve all these people. So Jesus completely heals with authority. Once again, he doesn't pray for her healing, but he heals her instantly with his own touch. And so at the synagogue, he teaches with authority and casts out a demon with authority. At Simon Peter's house, he heals his mother-in-law with authority and heals her completely. And so the theme that you see on and on in this chapter, and as you see in the Gospels, is that Jesus does a whole lot of things by his own authority. He just does things. He just does these things with his own authority. Verse 32. And at even when the sun did set. Now pause there for a minute. What's that mean? The sun is set. So Sabbath's over. Right? Because a whole day is from sunset to sunset. And so keep in mind, when he cast out that demon at the synagogue, and everybody went back home in their neighborhood, they're like, dude, there was this guy there. This rabbi, his name is Jesus, he was teaching, and there was a demon, and he just cast the demon out, and he taught with authority. Like, you mean he just cast out? Like, yeah, oh man, maybe he can take care of my problem. Maybe he can heal me. Maybe he can take care of that. And so word spread, but none of them, they knew where he was, but because they didn't want to accidentally break any Sabbath laws, they're like, we don't know if it's okay to heal on the Sabbath or not. We don't know if that's all right, so we'll wait till the sun goes down. Like we don't want any people at the temple getting on to us about this. So we'll wait till the sun goes down is what it seems to be the case, because no one comes over till the sun goes down. So they wait till Sabbath is over. They travel over to the house. They brought unto him all that were diseased and them that were possessed with devils. And all the city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many that were sick of diverse diseases, and cast out many devils, and suffered not the devils to speak, because they knew him. And so I love this. Once again, demons are trying to say, oh, you're not killing us, all right? This isn't the end for us, is it? Like, we know you. They just shut up and get out of here. Like, he just shuts them up, casts them out. He's healing people. And it seems like the text here, basically the whole town showed up at Simon Peter's front door. And so Jesus is no longer in the main part of the living quarters there. He's at the front entrance, and he's there healing people right there in the neighborhood on the street and casting out the demons. And we know the sun's already set, so it's kind of late. It's late in the day, or in their case, it's early the next day, right? Because the next day has started now that the sun has set. So he's healing all these people. And so it's late in the day, and he ministers to the multitudes at Simon Peter's front door. With authority still. And so you see him at the synagogue. You see him in the house. You see him at the front door. Verse 35, and in the morning, rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place, and there prayed. Now, I don't know what time it is, but I know this. He was healing a whole city full of people after the sun had set. And then he goes early in the morning before the sun comes up to go pray. All I know is that the sun's down that whole time. It doesn't tell us how much rest he got, if he got any rest, how late people were there at the front door. But that was a long day for Jesus. He taught at the synagogue. He healed Simon's mother. He heals the multitudes at the front door. And he gets up before the sun comes out to go to a solitary place and to pray. So within a little more than a day, we see Jesus at about 4 different locations. We see him in the synagogue. We see him at Simon Peter's house. We see him at Simon Peter's front door. We see him in a solitary place. All this happens. And as Christians, this is something that ties into us now. As Christians, this is an example of how we are to minister to others and how we're to be spiritually refreshed. See, Jesus ministered to others as they were gathered for worship. And we should minister to one another as we are gathered for worship. Jesus ministered to Simon's family in Simon Peter's home, and we should be ministering to our spouse and our kids at our home. Jesus ministered to the community at Simon Peter's front door, and we should be given to hospitality and minister to the people in our community. And really important, Jesus got away from the crowds, got away from the distractions to be alone with the Father, and we must find time to get away from distractions and be alone with God. This is what Jesus does within a 24-hour period. You know, it's interesting about Jesus going to synagogue because some people have this idea that Jesus was like anti-anything structure. But if he was, he wouldn't have gone to synagogue. He wouldn't have taught at the synagogue. Some people thought that Jesus didn't like teaching. He just came to like give everybody free health care or something. But he was a rabbi. He was a teacher. And he taught. But Jesus just doesn't go to structured worship and teach. He also interacts in the home. He also interacts in the community. And he also gets alone by himself. And you see the consistency of who he is. He's not different at different places. He is who he is in all these moments. And this is an example for us. So this is what's really interesting. So Jesus gets away, solitary place, and he's praying. And verse 36, and Simon and they that were with him followed after him. So I don't know who saw him leave or who knew what direction he went, but they figure out kind of the basic idea of where he went, and they go looking for him. Like, he went that way. All right, let's follow after him. And then it says, then they found him. I don't know how long it took him to find him. I don't know how long Jesus' solitary worship went, because it seems like he got interrupted. He tried getting away, but they followed after him, and they find him. And they say this. They found him, and they said unto him in verse 37, all men seek for thee. I heard it this way. It's like, Jesus, you're trending right now. Like, everybody in town knows who you are, and they want to see you. It's like you're trending on the hashtags on Twitter. Everybody is like adding you on there. Like, you're trending right now. They know who you are. Now's the time to like plant your feet and just like take advantage of the fact that you're trending. And that seems to make sense, right? No matter what, whether it's a business or whether you're doing ministry, it's like, oh man, like look at all that's happening right here. Man, I'm just going to plant my feet right here because it's trending, it's happening, it's going on right now. But Jesus doesn't say that. He says this in verse 38. He said unto them, let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also. For therefore came I forth. And he preached in their synagogues throughout all Galilee and cast out devils. And so those verses there represent a large period of time. He then leaves and starts preaching at other synagogues and teaching other people and casting out more demons. And so Jesus leaves where his popularity has grown to go where he has not yet been. And his reason for that, he says, because I came to preach. That's why I came. I came here to proclaim the good news of God's kingdom and repentance and belief in the gospel. This is why I came. And so what you have to consider here is, as many people as Jesus healed, there's a lot of people that were looking for him that he didn't heal. And he said, I got to go to the next town. I got to go to the next place. And I said, but it's Jesus. Didn't he want to heal everybody? Didn't he want to just restore everybody? Jesus, according to him, no. No, I got to go spread the message. I've got to spread the news that I am here. So why didn't Jesus heal everyone? Now, before we answer that, I think we should ask, why was he healing people? Why did he heal people? And there's several reasons for that, I believe. The first is he healed, yes, to demonstrate his authority. Once again, he taught with authority, cast out demons with authority, healed with authority, and it helped authenticate him as the Messiah. So part of his reason for healing is it authenticated him, showed his authority. Secondly, he healed to demonstrate his kingdom. Because in God's kingdom, sickness is done away with. Evil spirits are no more, and death dies. And so every time he casts out a demon, every time he healed someone, every time he rose someone back to life, he's like, this is what my kingdom's going to be like. It's like everything's going reverse of what is normal. Everything is going to be reverted to the way that it was supposed to be, with no sickness and no death and no evil presence. And every time he's doing that, he's demonstrating what his kingdom's going to be like. And thirdly, he healed because he's full of compassion. And he desires to make people whole. What I love about Jesus is that no one has to convince him to heal them. Hey, Jesus, will you heal me? Yes. He doesn't have to be convinced of it. That being said, why did he not heal everyone? Why did he not heal everyone? Well, one thing is he didn't heal everyone because his primary purpose for coming was not to eliminate physical suffering. That comes later. I'm talking about his first coming here on earth. He wasn't here that first time to eliminate physical suffering. That wasn't his purpose this time. He came to preach repentance and belief in the gospel, and ultimately to fulfill the gospel, accomplish the gospel by dying on the cross, then raising from the dead. He came to die. He came to be the suffering servant. He came in humility to die for us. Jesus could have healed everyone in Israel, right? Absolutely he could have. But every single one of them was still going to die eventually. In order for people to be welcomed into his eternal kingdom, with no more sickness, no more death, he was going to have to die. And people need to repent and believe. See, many people came to Jesus for physical healing, and many of those same people did not come for his preaching. Some wanted temporal healing, but rejected ultimate and eternal healing. That's a devastating truth. It's like, oh man, Jesus is really cool. He can heal me of this, but they didn't want their soul to be healed. That being said, to this day, God chooses to heal some people in this life, and others he chooses to have wait for healing. And I don't know how or why, nor is it mine to know, because I'm not God. But what I do know is that there are people who have suffered greatly and have used their suffering to point to Jesus. And their great faith has been used to reach many people with the gospel. What I do know is that when people have been miraculously healed, God's used that miracle to point people to Jesus. So one way or another, it is as true today as it was when Jesus said to the blind man, it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him. Once again, I don't know how God decides who or what or when, but I know this. In other words, God's choice is always good and always best. And ultimate healing is coming. Verse 40 says, and there came a leper to him, beseeching him and kneeling down to him and saying, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus, moved with compassion, put forth his hand and touched him and said unto him, I will, be thou clean. And as soon as he had spoken, immediately the leprosy departed from him, and he was cleansed. So a couple of things we've got to point out about this leper, okay? Leprosy is a terrible thing. And I won't get into details of it, but it's a bunch of like sores, and it deteriorates your skin and makes you not look like yourself. It's very painful. But that apparently isn't the worst part of it. The worst part of it was that you'd be banned from society. You're not allowed to come into town. You're not allowed to worship at the synagogue. You're not allowed to hang out with your family. It's like you are shunned. And part of that is because they didn't want to get leprosy. Don't spread that to us. But if you touch someone with leprosy, right? So let's say you don't have leprosy, but you touch someone that has leprosy, you're considered unclean. You touch someone with leprosy, you're unclean, so you got to go through all this stuff before you're clean again. Like, you got to stay away. That is a leper and the situation that's going on here. So Jesus, who's a righteous man, who's the Messiah, who's clean, does something. He does a big no-no. He touches a leper. He touches a leper. Like, this is like unheard of, absurd. But this is what's so amazing about it. Jesus doesn't become unclean. Rather, the leper becomes clean and completely healed. This is significant. And if you read any of the Old Testament and the law, this is significant. Nobody could touch a leper without becoming dirty. But Jesus touches the leper, and the leper becomes clean, and he remains clean. And there's something very spiritually significant about this for us today, which is this. Sometimes you might think, I'm too dirty to come to God. I have too much filth. God doesn't want to see me. I'm too dirty. Or they might think or have the idea that, I got to clean my life up before I can come to God. So once I get some stuff figured out, then I'll start praying. Then I'll start talking to God. Once I get my life figured out, then I'll start coming to church and hanging out with people. Once I get this stuff figured out, and once I get everything cleaned up, then I'll come to God. No, listen. I've heard people say comments of like, oh, I can't come to church because the ceiling will fall on my head if I go in there. Like, this idea that if I'm around God, God is just going to spit on me and hate me and reject me, so I'm not going to come to Him because I've done too much. I'm too dirty. They've given up on themselves completely. I've done too much. But the reality is this. When someone comes into contact with Jesus, they can't make Him dirty. It's impossible. They can't make Jesus dirty. All that can happen is that He can make you clean. He can make you well. And so for anybody that is watching or here today, like no matter where you're at, always remember with your shortcomings and your failures, you go to Jesus because He makes you clean. And you never make Him dirty. That is significantly important for us to understand, that Jesus makes us clean. You cannot make Him dirty. It is impossible. So no matter what horrific thing that you've done or thought or whatever, you can come to Jesus because He makes people clean. It's what He does. So He's continuing to heal people with authority once again. Whether He tells them or touches them, it just happens. Our youngest, Michael, asked us in the car the other day, he said, how did God make everything? And well, He just did. No, but how did He do it? And so all I said was, well, He just said what He wanted, and then there it was. And he went, cool. I did not expect that response, but I love that childlike faith. Like, He just said it? No, that's cool. And this is the type of authority that Jesus is doing. He just says, He just does, and those things become. So this is another interesting part of the story. Verse 43, and Jesus straightly charged him, and forthwith sent him away, and said unto him, see, thou say nothing to any man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer for thy cleansing those things which Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. So once again, if someone ever were to overcome their leprosy, according to the law, they needed to go bring the proper sacrifices to the temple in Jerusalem and then show themselves to the priest. The priest would be like, yep, you're clean, you can be in society now. And so he told them to do that. He told them, all right, go do what the law says, take the sacrifices, and have the priest verify that you're clean. Think of the amazing testimony this would have been. Him going there, suddenly being made clean, the priest verifying that he is clean. That would have been a testimony to Jesus. But he doesn't do what Jesus told him to do. Jesus always tells people something for a reason to do, and he wanted him to go there, confirm the healing. Keep in mind, the priests end up going in the temples that they end up going in cahoots with everybody else and trying to deny what Jesus has done. And this would have been really great evidence of his authority. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. But Jesus does tell the leper not to tell anyone. So we have to ask this question. Why did Jesus tell some people not to share that they'd been healed? Because as you read through the Gospels, Mark tells us all these stories where he tells people not to often. But sometimes he tells people to tell. Well, what's that about? Well, it seems that it would depend upon the people and the place. And some people have given like 7+ reasons of possibilities of why. I don't think it's necessarily that complicated. I'll tell you 3 things. Why did Jesus sometimes tell people not to share that they'd been healed? I think we can boil it down to 3 things. First of all, his goal was not to heal as many people as possible. We've already kind of talked about that. That wasn't his primary mission or goal. His goal was not even necessarily to have a large crowd. Did Jesus have large crowds follow him? Yes, but he wasn't like putting out flyers and saying like, no, he just like, that's not how he got a large crowd following him. It had to do with his miracles. If people would just like, where is he? And large crowds ensue. But that wasn't necessarily a goal of his to have a large crowd. Large crowds of people could actually hinder his ministry instead of help it. Jesus is always trying to find a way to get away from a crowd. He loves teaching with his knit group of 12 disciples. He loves teaching in the synagogue. He loves going house to house and ministering to people and that. Oftentimes, he's trying to avoid these large crowds. In fact, I think it's Mark 5, when a woman touches Jesus' garment and she's healed immediately. And keep in mind, there's a massive crowd, massive people all around. And Jesus stops and goes, who touched me? Like, Jesus, come on, bro. Like, there's people everywhere. Like, there's no way you're going to find. So basically, Jesus like, forget about the crowd. Where's that one person that just touched me? Where's that one person that I just impacted? Where are they? I want to talk with them. And so oftentimes, Jesus is trying to go to that person's house or minister to this person or talk to this one person versus the crowd that's just there for the free food and free healings, right? It's like, no, who's that one person that was desperate for me? Who's that one person who knows that they need me? And you see that with Jesus. All right, so his goal wasn't necessarily to have a large crowd or to heal as many people as possible. So that would be one reason. Secondly, his timing, and that could hinder what he's trying to do, right? So, but second of all, his timing for when he would face the cross was specific, right? So he has an intention of when he's going to die, when he's going to go to the cross. If his popularity kind of grows too fast and the wrong people hear about it too quickly, they could want to kill him even quicker. All right, so it could be a timing issue, if you will. And then third of all, I think what comes into play is his judgment. His judgment could be in play for people he did not want to let know about his miraculous healings. And that seems like, why wouldn't Jesus want somebody to know? The only other example I can give of that is sometimes when Jesus was teaching parables, right? He teached this and Jesus did not teach in parables to make it easier to understand. Jesus said the opposite. In fact, his disciples were like, why are you talking in stories, in like riddles? Why? He's like, because I don't want them to know. I don't want them to know what I'm talking about. And they're like, and he goes, and Jesus is like, what, you didn't get the riddle either? Here, let me explain it to you. And so he explains it to them, these parables, these stories, because some people had already rejected him, had already pushed him aside, and Jesus was like, I'm not going to tell them what it means. That was his choice of judgment to them. And there were some people that God decided he didn't want them to know that he was healing people in that area at that time, which he has every right to do. And so it seems also in his judgment. So whatever those reasons are, regardless of those reasons, he had his reasons at different times for telling people to hold their tongue. That being said, I want to make this very clear. We're now living in a time where Jesus has told us to tell everyone about Jesus. As believers this morning, he's not telling us, oh, no, don't tell anybody, Caleb. No, don't tell anybody about Jesus. No, we don't live in that time. These are specific incidents where he does that. But now he's given us the Great Commission to go tell the world all about him, to tell everyone about his eternal kingdom. And people have a right to reject the gospel, right? But we have a responsibility to declare it. Verse 45. But when he went out and began to publish it much, this is the healed leper, he didn't go to the temple. He didn't go do his sacrificing. Instead, he's like, hey guys, I used to be a leper and this guy healed me and all that. His name's Jesus. I know where he's at. Bring all your friends. It's like this complete opposite of what Jesus told him to do. And to blaze abroad the matter. And so it's that Jesus could, once again, I talked about how it could hinder his ministry. Jesus could no more openly enter into the city. He couldn't do what he was doing. He couldn't just go into the city and interact with people anymore. He pushed him outside the city, but was without in desert places, and they came to him from every quarter. So Jesus' popularity grows. The crowds become so large, he's now ministering and teaching people outside of the city limits because there's not room. And they're gathering in the desert. They're gathering in the mountainsides. They're gathering by the seaside. Like, if you look at the rest of, like, every time Jesus enters a city, it's like, shoo, it's like a magnet. They come like this. So you're having to minister outside of city limits. So what's something that we can see from this, of what happens with the disobedience of this leper? And I had never noticed this before, but when I was reading, I think that it is a great analogy and truth this morning, which is this. Jesus heals a leper. And what is it about a leper? They're not allowed to be inside the city limits because they're a leper. He heals him, and then the leper disobeys Jesus, and this forced Jesus to be outside the city. So literally, Jesus swapped places with the leper. He used to be in the city, now he has to be out. That guy had to be out, now he's in. And the reality is that our sin or our disobedience is what caused Jesus to suffer on the cross and be cast out in our place, that we might be allowed to be in fellowship with God. So in the same way that that leper's disobedience swapped places, Jesus has swapped places in us because of our disobedience, because of our sin. And have this example here in the text of Mark of when this happened literally to him, of swapping places. And that's the reality of the gospel. Jesus can touch the filthiest and dirtiest of people, and he makes them clean. Because he took our place on the cross. He paid the price that we could not pay. Buried our sin, and rose again that we might have new life in him and joy in him, that we might be able to enter into his eternal kingdom and worship him forever in glorious unity and no more sickness and no more death.